So in this video, I'm going to talk about a bunch of stuff, and it might not all make sense, but I promise I'm going to try and pull it all together. So for me, I think something shifted between Monday and Friday when it came to the Sussexes being received by the King and Queen. Because, prior to Harry's visit, and then Meghan and the children joining him, I think the briefings, as you know, they've been a lot of them, and it was briefed in particular that Camilla has decided she will not be around for anything. But then something happened, so I've been thinking what happened, but I'm going to talk about the timeline, and then let's work out together what happened and why, and really the real reason why the palace decided to receive Harry and Meghan. And many of us can guess at the reason, but I'm going to do a timeline. So essentially, Harry arrives Monday, and he is met with, sorry, no room for you at the inn. So he made alternative arrangements. Anyway, thankfully, it was just going to be him spending the night at Buckingham Palace. And they said no. And he said, okay, no problem. So made other arrangements. And then on Tuesday, he had the verdict, which I thought was a bit weird. The coincidence of the timing at exactly the same day that was the start of the Invictus 1 Year to Go events. And we know on Tuesday was a conference at Chatham House where he was giving a welcome speech. And at the same time, the verdict was rendered. We know what the verdict was. So I'm not going to go into the verdict. Then we had Wednesday, Thursday, where he did many visits, including the visit to Birmingham Children's Hospital. And again, we saw him in action, very natural, very authentic, incredible. And then we saw him again on Friday at Birmingham itself, the NEC Birmingham itself, doing these lovely, lovely events. And he was then interviewed by Alison Hammond. I still maintain, stroke of genius. Thank you, ITV, for sending Alison, because, again, everybody got to see the Harry that we all love and admire. But the point is that Buckingham Palace announced on Thursday that Meghan will not attend any public events with Harry following the Ryvek security denial reported earlier in the week. And also the fact that Buckingham Palace, with every bit of pride, also announced that they withdrew the offer. Oh my God, what an own goal. Proudly announcing that they withdrew the offer of accommodation from Harry. And yet, after that was announced, I believe that this is what happened. Obviously, we all saw what happened on social media. The reaction was not what the palace expected. So the social media reaction was like, that was horrible. I mean, people of my age with grandchildren were horrified that the king would actually announce and use a ridiculous excuse of, he didn't give us enough time. And they did something. And they do this a lot. They brief different things to different people. So to Harry, they said to him, well, constitutionally, you're putting your father in an awkward position, especially with your lawsuit against the Daily Mail. So, we can't give you accommodation. And then they briefed the public that Harry didn't submit his request, or he didn't submit his acceptance on time. And people were like, if you knew he was coming and you'd already prepared the room, or you've prepared the possibility that he was coming, what's all this nonsense about, admin work and not having enough staff and all that malarkey? Who are you kidding? But anyway, all that went, right? This is what I think. I think after the backlash and after the American press in particular wading in and saying, really? I think there was a panic amongst the courtiers. And I think Team Reconciliation was like, well, we told you. And Team Estrangement had to take the L and let Team Reconciliation step in to do some damage control. Because here's the thing. Imagine if Harry and Meghan were seen photographed, right? Harry, Meghan and the kids were seen and photographed with Diana's side of the family, and the Windsor side of the family have a big fat zero. And here's the irony. The Windsor side of the family, they actually have power, they have authority to make certain things happen. And they botched it. It was fiasco to fiasco to fiasco. They were the ones leaking briefing. And all Harry did was stand his ground and correct. And Harry was like, no, we're not playing these games anymore. The days of you putting my name to a statement that I didn't authorize, those days are over. I am now standing on my own 2 feet. I now have my own spokesperson, thank you very much. And you will not play those games with me. And that upset the palace even more. So Team Estrangement, they decided to teach Harry a lesson. However, the blowback was not what they expected, because the American press, they got involved. And as you know, if there's one thing that the Brits, especially the royal Brits, absolutely love, is getting positive coverage in the American press. They don't care about the British press because they already have the British press sewn up. But the American press, and then I realized that is actually an amazing lever. That is actually an amazing thing. That is a weakness. And every weakness can be exploited. So the moment they saw American press saying, you know what? How can you even think this? How petty are you? And is it really true that you said there's no room? That was when I believe the shift happened. Because one thing that the palace values more than anything is optics. They don't want to look bad. They want to look tough on Harry. They want to look like they are in control, but they don't want to look bad, because already words like deadbeat dad was already circulating, and other even more terrible words were circulating. So they probably saw what was happening on social media, what was happening in the American press, and they panicked. So Team Reunion then had to step in and say, okay, we can still make this reunion happen, and this is how it's going to happen. And I believe that was when Camilla said, you know what, to rehabilitate my image, because Camilla's image has taken a bit of a bashing, especially since she posed with J.K. Rowling, and a number of people did not like that. So she decided to, okay, I'm going to be there anyway, despite briefing the press that she doesn't want to be present at any such meeting, particularly after what Harry said about her. So her being present, she feels, would be seen as, well, extending an olive branch. Now, there is also something else that came back to me, and it was the tiara moment. Remember, the moment the Spencers offered Meghan the Spencer tiara, and she based her wedding veil around that tiara because the veil had scalloped edges, etc. That was when the palace decided, you know what, we cannot let this happen, because what they don't like happening is a direct comparison of Meghan, or a direct line being drawn from Meghan to Diana. That is reserved for the other girl. The other girl should be dressed like Diana, should follow in Diana's footsteps, should colonize everything to do with Diana, because I believe they're trying to wipe traces of Diana from that family, but they will not succeed because people still support and love Diana. So they are saying, okay, if Meghan is received by the Spencer family very warmly, again, parallels are going to be drawn between her and Diana. So just like the tiara debacle, they decided, you know what, as in the palace decided, you know what, we would be the first to receive them first, and we would be the first to issue a statement, and we will tell Harry and Meghan not to say a word, because we still need to show we are in control, and we still need to control the press.
Do they arrive? Don't know. Will we see them? Don't know. Will there be any photos of them? Don't know that either. There'll be a lot of cameras out in lots of places trying to find them. And I imagine that they've got the blackest of blacked out windows in the back of the car, so you can't see Meghan and the kids wherever they go. I do know this. There is a big reunion on Harry's other side of the family. So Princess Diana's family, including her brother Charles Spencer and her two sisters, Lady Sarah McCorquodale and Lady Jane Fellows. Now, Charles Spencer has a big house, Althorpe Estate. It's actually where Diana is buried. You know, she's buried on an island in the middle of a lake in that estate. My understanding is there's a big Spencer family reunion for Harry and Meghan coming over. So part of their time, at least on Friday, will be spent there. The big question is what happens on Harry's side of the family? And as ever, relations there are very difficult. We know he's not going to see William. No way. That one's completely out. But I think, as you say earlier, I think everyone is hoping he will be able to see his father. Do they arrive? Don't know. Will we see them? Don't.
Squaddies, welcome back to the channel, and woo, what a week it has been. Before we get straight into it, this is just my opinion. Listen to the end and let me know what are your thoughts on this intricate matter. So, people in Britain are giving the absolute side eye to this sudden private family reunion between King Charles, Harry, Meghan, and the kids at Highgrove. Everyone is looking at this and asking the exact same question. Is this real life, or is it just pure optics? Let's be completely real about the timing here. The royal family has had the UK press sitting comfortably in their back pockets for years, spinning whatever narrative they want. But the second the American media stood up, looked across the pond and started absolutely blasting Charles for his cold, distant behavior towards his own son and grandchildren, the palace panicked. The moment people over in the States and across the world started calling him a deadbeat dad and a detached grandfather, the UK press machinery went into overdrive. And suddenly, magically, the King and Camilla decide it's time to host Harry, Meghan, Archie and Lilibet. On a street level, regular people see right through this. This isn't a sudden burst of fatherly love. It's a calculated move to prop up a severely damaged image. They needed to make Charles look like a benevolent id king who cares about his family, rather than a man who iced out his own grandkids for 4 years. If the global press hadn't started calling out that toxic behavior, those palace gates would still be firmly shut. It's hilarious because they thought they controlled the media game, but the minute the international coverage turned up the heat, the palace had to fold and play nice just to save face. Now, let's talk about the absolute comedy of errors that went down behind the palace walls regarding where Harry and the family were going to sleep. The palace tried to play hardball, pulling a petty move and withdrawing Harry's invitation to stay at a royal residence at the last second. They thought they were trapping him. But then, the Diana family stepped up. The Spencers at Althorpe House essentially said, "Don't worry about them, Harry. Bring Meghan and the grandkids over to our estate, we've got you covered." The absolute second the Spencer family offered to host the Sussexes, Buckingham Palace went into a code red panic. Suddenly their gears shifted overnight. Arrangements were magically made, and the palace hurried to leak to the press that Harry, Meghan and the kids had met up with Charles and Camilla at Highgrove. Why the sudden rush to control the headline? Because the Windsors were terrified. They knew that if the public saw Harry and Meghan bypassing the royal residences completely to go be embraced by Diana's family, it would look terrible for the king. It would completely blow up their PR narrative. Let's keep it real on a street level. This is like that toxic family who locks you out of the house, but the moment your cool aunt offers you her guest room, the family panics because they don't want the neighbors seeing you over there. They had to scramble, play nice, and leak the reunion story first just to make sure they got credit before Althorpe House could show them up. The palace didn't schedule that meeting out of the goodness of their hearts. They did it because Diana's family forced their hand, and the Windsors just couldn't handle losing the PR war. Let's look at the absolute peak hypocrisy of this entire situation. For years, literally years, the palace has been dripping stories to the media saying they have zero interest in reconciling with Harry. They wanted everyone to think they had washed their hands of the Sussexes completely. But then, the internet and the American media stepped up and started absolutely roasting Charles. They put his cold behavior under a massive global microscope, and the palace completely folded under the backlash. Suddenly, the institution that spent years claiming they wanted nothing to do with Harry is scrambling to orchestrate a family reunion. They completely flipped the script. They swallowed their pride and accepted the exact thing they claimed they never wanted, all because they desperately needed to fix their public image. Regular people know exactly what this is. This is like that petty relative relative who swears they are done with you, blocks you on social media and tells the whole family you're dead to them. But the minute the rest of the neighbors start calling them out for being bitter and heartless, they suddenly show up at your house with a plate of cookies, smiling for the cameras. They didn't have a sudden change of heart, they just realized they looked bad to the public. The palace didn't open the gates of Highgrove because they suddenly missed Harry, Meghan and the kids. They did it because the global backlash got too hot and they realized that pretending to be a loving family was the only way to save their own optics. It's pure desperation, and honestly, it's hilarious to watch them scramble.
Let's look at the absolute chess game happening behind the scenes with this media coverage. We all know the Windsors hold massive power across the UK press ecosystem. They basically dictate the front pages of the British tabloids. It is incredibly rare to see the major UK papers actually trash the royal establishment because they work hand in hand. So when news broke about this private meeting at Highgrove, notice who ran to the microphones first. It was Buckingham Palace leaking that Harry and Meghan met the king. Why did they scramble to control the narrative? Because they know that Harry and Meghan do not need their press briefings, their media operations, or their royal stamp of approval to stay relevant. The Sussexes completely control their own narrative globally. Regular people can see exactly what the strategy is here. The palace already has the UK media locked down in their back pocket. The British papers will always spin things to make the king look good. The only hurdle they had left was trying to manipulate the international perspective, especially the American press, which has been calling out the palace's cold behavior. They leaked this reunion story intentionally to make it look like Charles is the one driving a family healing process. It's an aggressive PR stunt designed to shift public opinion across the Atlantic. But the reality is glaringly obvious. Harry, Meghan and the kids are totally independent global figures. The palace is using this reunion to feed the media and look benevolent, while the Sussexes are just out here living their lives, completely unbothered by the palace press games. Now, let's talk about the absolute masterclass in distraction strategy coming from Camilla's corner. If you've been paying attention, Camilla's public image took a massive hit online after she was spotted hanging out and taking pictures with J.K. Rowling. The internet completely exploded with backlash, and the timing left her looking totally tone-deaf. The palace comments section was a total war zone. So how do you fix a massive internet mess overnight? Simple. You shift the spotlight to something even bigger. Think about the wording of the official palace announcements. They didn't just say the king met with his son. The headlines loudly announced that the king and Camilla met with the Sussexes. That is not an accident. Camilla absolutely used this sudden family reunion as a human shield to clear the air and bury her own bad press. Regular people know this play perfectly. This is like when someone gets caught gossiping or doing something messy at work, so the very next day they show up early with donuts for the entire office and volunteer to lead the charity drive. They aren't doing it because they suddenly became an angel. They're doing it so everyone stops talking about the mess they made yesterday. Camilla needed a massive positive headline to clean up her image, and what better way than attaching her name to a heartwarming family reconciliation with Harry, Meghan and the kids. They used the Sussexes' global popularity to rinse off their own bad PR, proving once again that the palace doesn't do anything unless there's a scorecard involved. Now let's completely step away from the toxic palace drama and talk about what real, genuine family looks like. Let's talk about the Spencers and why Harry and Meghan spending time at Althorp House actually matters. This isn't about institutional relationships, titles, or corporate royal duty. This is about Princess Diana's legacy and real bloodline support. While the Windsors are busy playing chess with press releases, the Spencers opened their doors and provided actual, uncomplicated human support for Harry, his wife, and their kids. Harry is maintaining deep personal ties with his mother's side of the family, and that is a beautiful thing. But of course, the UK media just couldn't let them have a peaceful family moment. The absolute desperation out there right now is peak comedy. Photographers like Chris Shipp and a whole crew of paparazzi were literally spotted outside Althorp House, camping in the bushes and stalking the estate. They are completely starved for a photo. They are absolutely desperate to catch a glimpse of the Sussexes with Diana's family, because they know those pictures would break the internet. The media claims nobody cares about Harry and Meghan anymore, yet they have their top royal editors sleeping in cars outside Althorp House, just hoping to snap a blurry photo of them walking the grounds. It shows you exactly who holds the power. Harry
Harry doesn't need the palace balcony when he has the unconditional love and backing of his mother's family, and no amount of media stalking can change the fact that he's protecting Diana's legacy on his own terms. Alright squaddies, that's a wrap. Thanks for watching. I'm your host Miles. Stay legendary, and I'll see you in the next one. Blessed week ahead.